All right, welcome everyone to the Wallet Interoperability Special Interest Group call for June 2nd, 2025. Today on the agenda, we will hear about the European Wallet Commission and large-scale pilots from Esther McKay. Esther is Signacat's VP of Digital Identity and leads the work package dealing with testing and interoperability in the EWC. And yeah, in this session, she'll give an overview of the European large-scale pilots and how EWC works with their participants on interoperability. So really looking forward to this presentation. We are recording this call, of course. It will be posted on the meeting page later today. We are following the Linux Foundation antitrust policy and the Hyperledger, the OpenWallet Foundation Code of Conduct. And let's see, are there any announcements before we get started, or if there's anybody who's new to the call who would like to hop off mute and introduce themselves, this would be a great time as well. Let's see, Sean, were there any updates you added that you wanted to call out specifically?
Yeah, no, I threw a couple of links in the different projects for when they've got calls this week. Basically, the Bifold and Credo community meets every other week. The Occupy maintainers meet every other week. This just happens to be a week where we have maintainers, Credo, and Bifold all hitting, as well as the test harness community are all meeting on, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. Also, for folks on the call, Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust is holding a webinar with Oracle on self-sovereign identity on Hyperledger Fabric VDR and OWF Credo agents with privacy-preserving and non-creds verifiable credentials. I'm pretty excited to see this. I've been talking to the Oracle folks since last September, October. It's great to see one of our projects involved, but also, Stephen Karan, one of the co-chairs of this, is a maintainer of a non-cred. So we're pretty psyched to see this, and Oracle is one of the biggest companies in the world. So take a look there. It's free. It's a webinar. I believe it's only for 1 hour, and the link is there in the Wiki page, which I've added to the chat. I'll add it to the chat again, like in a half hour. That was it for me. Thanks, Sean.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, lots going on. Looking forward to those. Let's see. And then just a quick look at our upcoming wallet Interop SIG sessions. We'll focus on Bifold wallet, DID method standardization. We'll hear about the MOSIC NG wallets and the SDJOT JavaScript project in upcoming weeks. So be sure to join us for those as well. Let's see. In terms of additional project updates, let's see, Stephen, was there anything related to Occupy that you wanted to specifically call out?
Not too much. Things progress along. We have another release out, or release candidate. 131 is out as a release candidate. We're getting new contributions from people that hadn't previously contributed, which is fun to see. 131, yeah, release candidate. So
Release candidate 0.
Yeah. So that just went out Friday, and then we've got some other updates for long-term support coming out soon, probably this week. So just things keep rolling on. Lots of things happening in the Credo community, working on different back ends, and which opens up new possibilities for how Credo gets used. Those are flowing down into Bifold as well. So lots happening in on the development front and release front with Credo and Bifold.
Great. Awesome. That's good to hear. Thank you. All right. Let's see. With that, are there any other announcements or project updates or introductions before we jump into our presentation? All right. Yes.
Something. So I'm joining for the second time, and there is a project I would like to share with you, but I don't know if it's the time and place.
It is.
Oh yeah.
Please do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll just take 3 minutes, and maybe I can do a proper demo next time if it makes sense. You let me know. I'm Andrea from Forkbone BV, and we have been working on a conformance interoperability marketplace tool for identity, focusing on EUDI wallet. We are, we will soon expand it also to W3CVC and EPSI. And that's something so the tool is open source. I can share a link with you. We also have a semi-secret deployment. And that's something that we believe, well, we hope we're going to launch at the Identity Week Amsterdam. And we're also going to be at the Geneva meeting. I guess I scheduled a meeting with Char that I see online here. And we're also talking with other people. We're talking with people from FIDES and other actors. Yeah, you can have a look at this. And I could give a demo of the solution next time. I just posted some. Yes, you can probably see it.
Cool. So there's a comma in the link.
My fault.
I just
try one more
fixed
time.
it for you, Andrea. It's
There you go. It's there.
in chat. There you go.
Thank you.
And for anybody else joining us, also in chat, I included a link if you'd like to sign up to present in this meeting. It's a Google Doc. It's just a schedule of weeks. Put your name and what you want to talk about in there, and we'll get back to you.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Excellent.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for those links. And yeah, talking a bit about the project. Looking forward to coordinating with you about Geneva. And yeah, it would be great to see a demo and schedule a time for you to dive into the project and share about it with us. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome. I'm looking at the document now. It seems that the first date is 21st of July.
Yes, we are booked out a bit, but yeah, we can email and message to get you on the schedule. That'd be great.
Sounds good. I'll just note my name and product here, and then we can figure something out later.
Yeah, please do. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Any other announcements, introductions, or project updates? All right. Great. With that, I will hand it over to you, Esther. Feel free to still the screen share. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And Andrea will be at Geneva as well. So I think we booked an hour on Interop testing, and probably will be showing the same slides as I'm showing here today. But find us, team up, because
Yes,
yeah,
happy.
this is a thing. So today this is a two-part presentation. I'm going to tell you about the world that EUDI wallets live in, and then I'm going to hopefully take a bit more time on interoperability testing in EWC. All the slides will be shared. There's tons of links there, so I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible so we can have some interaction. I don't have to tell you that, there's wallets and wallets and wallets all around, and I think you've got a great source there. But it's a mix of a lot of different things right now. And I'm only going to talk about the European Digital Identity Wallet today, and that's a very specific beast. So this is what it's about. All the European member states are required to issue a wallet and identity to all of their citizens, which means that all of the Europeans will have access to a mobile national EID, which will be free to use, with government-grade assurance, usable in public and private sector across borders, and of course extensible with verifiable credentials. And this is part of legislation, EIDAS, which is a regulation that covers EIDs and trust services. There's an amended version of EUDI, which covers the mandatory provisioning of the wallets and new and updated trust services. And trust services are things like signing and certificate issuing, time stamping, and God knows what. So you've got your wallets, and the core thing here is it will be a national wallet. There will be a national brand and probably language to it, and there will be PID, personal identification data, the core identity attributes issued in it. And only when that has happened, it's an official European digital identity wallet. And then, of course, it can hold lots of other stuff as well next to that, but that's the core. And in order to do this, they've set up this whole ecosystem, and this is all being regulated with different actors' roles, and each actor and role has specific responsibilities. I'm not going to dive into all the details here, but roughly what you see here is in the middle is the wallet and the user. To the left, there's a whole bunch of people issuing stuff in there, and technically most of that is the same, apart from the bottom one, which is about signing, but legally there's big differences. And then top right is the relying party that requests presentation from that wallet. And everything is, of course, supervised and authorized. And Signicat, the company I work for, is going to be active in various areas, which is also why we're this deep into this whole wallet thing, although we will not be a wallet provider ourselves. I think there's plenty around. So in Europe, how does this work? You can get new legislation, which is great. This is a booster, a kickstart, which is in this case the EIDAS regulation. But do not forget, there's dozens, literally dozens of lower level legislation called implementing acts, which are more specific, will be common law in all member states. And also the member states can write specific, even tighter versions of them. Then there's the specifications, which consist of the architecture reference framework and a reference implementation wallet, which is an open source wallet that you can download and use. And typically the idea is that if a member state cannot be bothered with coming up with their own wallet or certifying existing wallets, then they can just download that one and adapt it to their needs. And last but not least, there's a demonstration which consists of the large-scale pilots, funded big projects that need to do a show and tell of the whole ecosystem. In the slides that I'm sharing, I'm providing links to all of these elements, so you can go and have a look. Timelines. We just saw the last of the implementing acts being sent off for public review. The first two batches have been adopted, and right now I'm terribly busy because the current large-scale pilots are wrapping up and the new ones will kick off after summer. And then the really most important timelines here are by the end of 2026, all member states must provide at least one wallet and issue PID into them. And the extended European area, which includes Norway, will get an additional year. And by the end of 2027, all regulated industries must accept the EUDI wallets for strong customer authentication, because it's more than anything, it's a very strong authentication method. And this drives the whole thing. Looking at the large-scale pilots, there's currently 4 of them in the final stages. The one I'm going to present on later is the European Identity Wallet Consortium, which is a large consortium covering, I think, 20 countries, 120 participants in both private and public sector, but at least half of them are private sector, and we focus on travel, payments, and organizational identity. Then another consortium that we're also part of is NOBIT, the Nordic Baltic governments, together with Italy for some reason, and they focus on payments. And so there's an overlap here, but they focus on account-to-account payments, whereas because EWC works with travel, they also focus on card-based payments, because try to book a plane ticket without your credit card. I dare you. Then there's Potential, which is a large consortium where many of the European governments participate, and they have multiple use cases, including mobile driving license and all sorts of e-government services. And last but not least, DC4EU, which has a big core on educational services, but also social mobility and the European EHIC, the insurance cards. All of these will be wrapping up somewhere by the end of the summer. Some will continue until September or October, and most of their deliverables will be public, so they will be shared. Then there's 2 new large-scale pilots starting, because we're not there yet. We thought when we started the first round of large-scale pilots that all the specifications would be ready, but in fact they're still not there yet. So we need a bit more time to work. And the one that I am going to continue in is the WeBuild Consortium, which will focus on organizational identity and really through use cases in business, supply chain and payments. But of course also it will cover natural persons and the interaction with the organizational wallets and persons. And this is really important. We're also going to see some new legislation in this area, because a natural person is one thing, but a legal person, of course, is a non-physical entity and very much nationally defined. And then there's Aptitudes, which is focusing on travel payments and vehicle registration. I have not that much information on them yet, because they don't have a public website, but that will come. So these will be starting off in August. Right now, we do have some concerns. If I'm looking at the legislative requirements of this all coming together, we're very concerned that the wallet landscape will be fragmented, because a lot of policies are being pushed to the national member state levels, where there's specific, what they call EID schemes, that need to be certified, meaning that a wallet unit, a wallet service, together with the onboarding of the identity and the binding to the user and the device, will be certified, and that certification going to be defined on the national level. And of course, in Europe, we already have lots of national existing EIDs that are not going anywhere. It's not like the wallet will wipe them out. They will coexist. I don't have to tell you that standards and specifications still are fairly immature, and interoperability is not easy. There will be a variety. We're working to get the core interoperable, but on the edges, in specific use cases, specific functionality, there will be a variety. Legal persons are not broadly understood, and like I said, they're embedded heavily in national legislation. So working with that will be a challenge. The focus, if you look at the legislation, is on EID, and data sharing is coming up, but the politicians really see this as yet another EID, and data sharing doesn't get the attention it deserves right now. And last but not least, we're seeing, out of the need to protect citizens, to protect their privacy and security, we see a lot of requirements for private sector and lower assurance use cases that might hamper adoption. So hopefully this will not stop it, but everyday usage will be tough when it comes to the certified EUDI wallets. If you look at the website of the European Commission, then this is going to be the new big thing. You can open a bank account, you can collect prescribed medication, you can check into flights and hotels, and everything is possible. Although I don't think there's any pharmacies working on this right now. So we really need to talk to them, see what they need to actually make this happen. And coming from product management, anyone in that area knows this picture. You want to buy a car, build a car, You're not going to throw in a couple of wheels and then add some taillights and then a horn, because the customer is not going to be happy. So you start with a little moped, and then you go to a bike, and then you have this electrical scooter, and by then the customer is fairly happy. Well, the trick here is that we're not talking about a car. What we're talking about on a European level right now is this whole high-speed bullet train transport system. And when we started out at the beginning of the LSPs, I think even a year ago, we were here. Right now, I think we're at the bike level, but we're still not too thrilled. So this is a general warning. There's still a lot of ground to cover before this will meet the expectations. Some optimism, though. There will be a high level of assurance digital identity available in every European member state, usable by private sector with a solid basis for data sharing, secure data sharing. And they've committed to update the implementing regulations, so the lower level legislation, on a yearly basis where needed to meet the developing standards. So legislation will be agile for the first time in history, I think. The wallets are definitely coming. And yeah, this is the slide where Signicat is working on, but you can read that in your own time. Moving on to EWC, which is one of the large-scale pilots, and we're working on travel payments and organizational identity. We started with some interoperability challenges where some of the other consortia were looking, where's the wallets? We had no lack of, I think, about 15 or 20 wannabe wallet providers. Some were already operational, some were just starting, others just had the ambition. So we had multiple participants venturing into this area, but not all of them were engaging in the same use cases or even interested in the same functionalities. Of course, when we started, there were hardly any standards or specifications. The recent months have seen almost bi-weekly updates on the standards and specifications, which is also not very helpful. And what is out there is not always as compatible as you'd want them to be. And of course, as with any standards, there's room for interpretation, especially on the last mile. Now, then talking to the use case people who were talking about booking a hotel room or engaging in a tender in a different country, they were typically on the business and functional level. And that's great because you need that. But to them, it's not always a clear distinction on what is core functionality or what is specific for their use case, what's different from the rest. We also were facing islands or bubbles being created, not interoperable, or having different approaches. So what we were seeing was that in some cases, wallets were talking directly to the use cases, working on specifically supporting them. In other cases, there were wallet providers aligning to the specifications, but not really paying attention to the use cases. And the risk here is that either you have, a stack of services that are completely compliant to the specifications, but unable to really support a use case, or they can really support a use case, but are not in line with the specifications. And that was what we needed to manage. When we started, I'm just doing a short history. We looked at, okay, we need different operational tests. We need connectivity, interop, end user piloting. And we started with fixing or setting a technology scope. Just saying, okay, this is what the use case needs. Every 3 months we'll review it, but whatever else is going on, this is what we're focusing on. Ignore everyone else for now, just to get some stability, some clarity. But then interop testing really quickly got complicated with way too many endpoints. And well, you can imagine, this works with this wallet, but not with that wallet, but that wallet has different, it doesn't really make sense. It's really hard to troubleshoot. And what we were seeing again was, services coupling off, saying, I can work with this wallet and that's a verifier, and I don't care about the rest. The rest has to conform to me. And this is when the wallet group, so the team with the wallet providers in it, started working on RCs, specifically to EWC, saying, okay, we're going to adopt this standard, this technology scope, and every wallet has to meet it. And they were avoiding all sorts of dependencies to other initiatives as well. Because at that point, I think this was 1.5 years ago, we saw a lot of emerging deployment profiles saying, this is a good idea or that's a good idea, but they were all hosted somewhere else. And we started defining them internally. And then the University of the Aegean adapted the join-up interoperability testbed to support EWC. And this is a testbed that allows for automated testing, self-conformance testing, and it was configurable to support both the core functionalities, but also the specific requirements that the use cases had. And that these last two initiatives really were a breakthrough. So our approach is to show, or rather enforce, interoperability. So we're challenging the immature standards by specifying the details and the choices through the RCs, which is being done on GitHub, and by raising issues and discussions. The multiple wallets having a central testbed, which is not a simulator or an aggregator, it's a man in the middle, actually. It's just messaging, catching all the interactions and reporting on it. That has the test scenarios for the RFCs, and the RFCs are split into core RFCs, which handle basic verifying and issuing functionalities, and more specific RFCs for the needs of several use cases. And what we said is everyone needs to run conformance tests against the RFCs, which is testing against real wallets and services. Yeah, I covered that. So basically what we did was, make it happen, make it work. And this is our motto, basically. You can make it good later. I don't know if we still have the time to really make it good. It won't be pretty, but we're getting there. Now, what you need to know is that in EWC, we differentiate between interop testing and piloting. So piloting is focused on end user experience and functionalities. And the technical part should work. And we've done 2 rounds of 2 phases of end user piloting so far. Probably some of you saw our second phase where you could actually book a Greek ferry as well. But that's the user experience. So not all features need to be piloted, but all features need to be tested. And interoperability testing is designed to support the piloting. So we also have specific pilot test suites in the testbed to support that. And only if you've shown conformance there, you're allowed to also go crazy in the end user piloting. This is a graphical depiction of, all the requirements, not just on the specifications and the standards, but also the implementing extra use cases, legal requirements that are being pushed into that ecosystem, and then to the large-scale pilots. And this is how we work internally as a process to discuss the RFCs candidates and then release them as a version to the ITB. The ITB integrates issuers, verifiers, and wallet providers, and they can run tests against each other and then report on it. Our testbed is, like I said, based on an open source building block provided by the European Commission. It validates all the transaction steps. We have a specific setup configured and hosted for EWC. So it's an online service, but participants can also use a local version for their internal development process. and it's continuously available. So where others have hosted hackathons and plug fests and whatnot, which is a very fun way to do this, this will give every participant in the consortium the ability to test and develop in their own pace, because we also have different versions of tests. So people that come to the party a bit later can still team up and join and work with it. Now, the ITB needs more than just the test cases and the RFCs. They also need data schemas, metadata, the crypto schemas, everything that you need, the rule books, the implementation guides, and of course the test scenarios. All of this is being done on GitHub and published there and coordinated by the local teams in the consortium. And we're now in the final stage of the project, so we need to prove full conformance interoperability. This is what I've shown 2 weeks ago in Stockholm to the whole consortium. Is EWC will end in July, so we needed to freeze our scope. And we've frozen it on these specifications, so draft 15 for VCI and 23 for presentation, and the elements in the ARF 1.8. Right now we're on 2.0. There's a specific RC 100 is the interoperability profile towards the ITB, which will be updated to version 3 right now. I said the end of May, but of course always runs a week late. And all operational participants will need to run the tests in there. That's a specific conformance test suite. They're allowed to fail, of course, because some of them have good reasons not to align to the RFCs, but we'll motivate that in our deliverables. Okay, so that's 4 large-scale pilots, focusing on their own use cases, having different deployment profiles. So there was a bit of worry that, you know, across the LSPs, are we going to get 4 different solutions? And our tech people said, well, no, I don't think we will. So they teamed up with the people from Potential, and for the last General Assembly, arranged a live demo to show interoperability amongst at least these 2 large-scale pilots. They're pretty confident they can do it for all LSPs, but you need to set really clear agreements on the technological scope. So you really need to define, we're using these standards, these versions, these data schemes, etc. This is the latest release. There could be some changes, but you can go check for yourself. So we've got basic RCs, as you see, on issuing and presentation. Then we've got an RC on PID and also on legal PID, which is a different data set and also different type of wallet. The individual wallet unit attestation, and I think right now there's also an organizational wallet unit attestation, because you need to check for that in the ecosystem. There's payment attestations that are specific to the payment use cases. There's document signing RC. And there's also a very important one on a trust mechanism, because Europe will work based on a trust list. Part of the trust infrastructure is a list of trusted lists. That's a very specific way of handling this. And we created our own trust list based on the work available in the EC on that, to mimic that trust list. We've also looked at the DC APIs, and it was decided to be optional in here, so that's part of the current RFCs, and we are focusing mainly on SD-JOTs because that covers all of our needs, but we also included verifiable credentials and the ISO standards as optional formats. Right now, We've got, let me count, 7 natural person wallets showing conformance. This was for the phase 2 piloting. We've got 4 organization wallets and 2 who are issuer or verifier only, who are conformant with most of the core RFCs. And this is an overview of the key technological choices that we made. But you can also find them if you go to the RFCs, they're listed there. More links for you. I just wanted to show, these are the people who made this possible, the testing in the Interop and the RFC. This is a core team. Most of them will also be in WeBuild, so we're going to continue this method of working there. And this is a slide from the General Assembly, which basically lists all the individual people, because we're not a standardization body, we're just a consortium. And these people all came together and contributed on GitHub to this. So thank you for your attention. And I noticed there was some chat activity, but I couldn't pay attention.
No worries on that, Esther. I was just putting a link to the wiki page for folks to catch up later. You've got Bo giving you a hand, and Shar as well. If anyone has questions for Esther, by all means, please either raise your hand or put it in chat.
Bo, I see your hand raised.
Well, that was one really good presentation, Esther. Thank you.
The slides will be shared, so you can read it at leisure and click on all the links and go discover our GitHub yourself.
Sure enough.
I just ask you, please refrain from asking us too much questions for the month of June, because, you know, this will be July, August, we're fine, but we're so crazy busy.
I can imagine. Just on a very high level, because I'm not the technical expert, and I try to leave time to you experts here to discuss specific topics. But first of all, we have good news. One of the good news was that I was very afraid of this hot air and absolutely needed activities with AI agents, that would take away all the attention from the wallets, and especially from the verified credentials the wallets, the agents need. And now we have seen in discussions, for example, LinkedIn, that there's nobody thinking that AI agents do not need verified credentials. So it became an additional set of horsepowers for what you're doing here. That was the first one. The second good news was obviously EU saying that the business wallets, meaning organization wallets, are now the top priority, and the German coalition agreement putting this as the top priority. Because without these organization wallets, obviously we can't get the credentials flowing, and then we don't need wallets if we don't get any credentials there. So that's really good news. Then the big picture here, which Samuel, who is on this meeting as well, presented the question about how HIIP and DIIP will work together, because we need both. That's pretty obvious to me. I guess that you haven't had time to discuss that too much, but should you? That's the question. Thank you, and thanks for an excellent presentation.
You're welcome. And I agree, AI agents will be very relevant, but if we don't get a firm foundation in terms of wallets and attestations and how all the bindings and trust mechanisms are being set up in place first, then I can't imagine the amount of hallucination going on.
Exactly.
And yes, business wallets are, and technically, you know, business wallets are complex because, well, like I said, an organization is not a physical entity. It doesn't have biometrics, doesn't have a mobile phone. Mm-hmm. Although there's, you know, one-person companies who would like everything on their mobile phone, so that's not completely true either. But we need a stern concept there of a business wallet, and what we're trying to push, especially from EUWC, is that a business wallet also is a verifier and an issuer. It's a different way of thinking. Well, natural person wallets are as well, of course, but it's more easy to ignore it in that area. But it wreaks havoc on the legislation once you start doing that. And business wallets and legal identity bootstrapping that are really necessary to go out and wallet everything. So if you're talking about a car wallet, for example, which is nice and tangible, a car wallet can only be sourced in an organizational wallet. It cannot be sourced anywhere else. So if we really get a grip on business wallets and what they mean and how they work, then we can wallet the rest of the world, whether it's physical or non-physical, or yeah. I truly believe that. Yes, Char.
Yeah, I was wondering, so why do you think that data sharing is neglected and the focus is so much on EID?
Well, I'm not going to ask because I'm not saying you should. If you read the legislation, a lot of the legislation only makes sense if you change EUDI wallet for EID. And then it makes sense. Then they're talking about an identity and authentication. Whereas a wallet is much more than that. And if you're talking about data sharing, then there's a richness in there that I think is not completely understood yet. And probably we just need to run with what we've got, launch it, make it safe, of course, and discover what it actually means beyond that. I do see in the legislation that the concept of having a mobile driving license or a digital passport is something that people get. But when you're actually talking about selective disclosure or zero knowledge proof or elements in there, then it gets so much more complicated. And right now, I just see a lot of rules falling short. And I think no one really knows what the effect will be. If you're looking at, for example, all the data schemes and catalogs, and there's now even going to be use case templates, but I don't think they're part of the specifications. It makes sense if you have a limited set of data that you're going to issue into the wallets. And you're going to harmonize it on a national level. But once you really need interoperability on the level of, for example, loyalty points, that's not something a government can handle or deal with. And then you see the weaknesses in, there's just not enough attention to that, I believe. Also, when you're talking about privacy, binding of data to other data, whether it's the identity or other attestations. There's just, but it's also looking at where we've started, where we are now. I think a lot of this has to happen when we're gaining experience by actually using it and doing it. Because otherwise it'll be a theoretical exercise. Basically, I think OpenWallet Foundation, when did you start? I think it was around 2 years ago, right?
2+ years ago, yes.
Yeah. And that came out of a need of, okay, there's this concept of a wallet, and we've got all these standards that have something to do with wallets and credentials. And still looking at your list, there's, I think the European wallet is just a very narrow piece of that. There's so much more happening in other areas. But there were some of those standards were not diverging. They were spreading out. They were, instead of being more specific, they started to include more possibilities, more functionalities, more optionalities. And by this European perspective on we have a wallet and this is what it is, and this is the legislation around it, they started converging, they started focusing. And I think it's very important that we do that. I don't think we always make the right choices, but also we can't say if it's the right choice because we have no clue. For example, that was slightly over a year ago that the German government decided to go for encrypted data, not secure channels for issuing data. I'm not sure if that's the right choice, but at least it's a decision and it gives you something to work towards. And I think we need that sort of scoping to really become smart about this. Does that make sense? Or am I just
Yeah,
wrong?
yeah. No, that's really helpful. So
Yeah.
it's part of the strategy of make it exist and then iterate on it and improve it.
And what's also hard right now is that, well, a small example, legal person identity. In EWC, it was the governments that had a discussion on that. And I think if I ask you in this group, you know, what should be the attributes that create such an identity, you could come up with 20 or 40 or even 100 attributes. Well, the only thing that they could agree on was it has to be an identifier. And yeah, there's a name in there, but that was still debatable because a name is a very... So that's what they came up with. It's an identifier and a name. Everything else is optional and depends on the country where a company is registered and what they can and want to do. And this is only one of those elements in the whole data world that makes it hard to align and to work with. And like I said, we're not even discussing the car wallet or loyalty points or, you know, where do the attributes come from? Who is responsible? What do they mean? So we'll probably also see a lot of work on semantics, ontology. I'm not sure if that will actually lead somewhere, but hey, it's Europe, so that's what we're doing. And at the same time, there's a lot of new developments going on. For example, in zero knowledge proof that we still cannot use in Europe because the crypto mechanisms used there are not currently approved by our government. So we really need to make a lot more work there, but it probably also just takes time and experience.
Yeah, interesting. Lots of moving parts.
Yeah. And the good news is that also larger companies are engaged in the LSP. So Google is an active part of various LSPs, but also in the new ones I've seen Amazon and others joining in, which to me also means that we really have a chance to achieve global interoperability on a very basic core level. So the core level of issuing and verifying, I'm very happy to see that we'll really have a global standard that works on that level. I'm not saying that but also I don't think the EUDI wallet will be, you know, something you can use everywhere. I mean, you won't, if you're going to go on a holiday in Asia, you won't be able to tap and go and pay for your train ride in Korea or wherever. That won't happen based on the EUDI wallet, but the same is that your national insurance or healthcare data will probably not be issued into an Apple wallet. And I think that sort of makes sense as well. But how all those wallets will evolve to, what type of wallets and how they will interact, that to me is a big question that we'll need to figure out.
Right. Let's see, what other questions are there from the group for Esther?
Well, if you want to know more about interop testing, And we'll have a session on the second day in Geneva, but then I'm looking at the list and I think who isn't having a session. So I'm hoping some of you will also be able to join others. Come and, talk to us, take a look. We'll probably have some live setups where you can toy around with, because I think this testbed in its core could also be a very great tool to support other interop testing. And if we have time, we'll allow other wallet providers to integrate there and at least, run against the profiles of the LSPs, so you can at least see, what works and what doesn't. Bo.
Yes, just of course, about 98 to 99% of all exchange of credentials will be domestic. And I was really delighted to see how easy it was last year for the National Social Security and the Helsinki Transport to take a wallet in use, an open source version. And also, of course, the private wallets available are easy to take in use. It goes like a dream. And the big organizations that took the organization wallets in use last year told us that to integrate that to their own systems is really kind of basic IT work, not a problem. But what appears to be a problem is to change the work process and of course the rule books that you need in ecosystems. So that takes time. And that's why we need to start going with the work processes now domestically in all member states of EU and elsewhere naturally, in 100 countries where this is going on. And realize that the wallet is the easiest part. Of course, to make wallets interoperable, that's your task, and that's not easy, but it will happen. Good progress, actually, what you have been described here. And then you have the question about HIP and DIIP, how they should work together, which is because there will be all sorts of credentials in the wallets, not all of them issued by states or banks or so forth by just about anyone, and people will actually need them. But so I'm pretty optimistic, having seen what FinduNet has done in Finland, and what the next one will be is then the hygiene pass that every restaurant needs and so forth from all their staff, which would be a very excellent next step just to open the eyes and get the SMEs to start demanding this stuff so that they can work in the same way with all their counterparts and not having to do technical integration with bigger companies or public sector organizations, always in different ways and so forth and so forth. So I'm just waiting for the ice hockey stick effect when it comes to people understanding how this works nationally. And once we do it nationally, of course, we have to see to it that in EU that it actually can also happen cross-border. And that may be a little bit more of a tricky situation than we understand now, but one day it will happen.
Well, technically, I think it can happen. What we've seen right now is that if you're credential agnostic, so if you don't pay attention to the contents of an attestation, you can share it, the verifier can accept it and make sense of it, pretty much. So we need a discovery on the data schemes, rule books, what is actually meant with, this blob that I'm getting. We've seen some interesting situations with photo ID, so the biometric photo from the passport, which is something a lot of commercial verifiers like to have because it helps you identifying the person in front of you. And the passport has a great high resolution photo in there, but that was actually when we first needed to start adjusting our tests to also make sure that the receiving end was seeing a picture and not some blob of code in the interpretation layer. But even that works. The only trick right now, and I really can't, I don't have a good view on that is that there's legislation saying that every attribute, every piece of data needs to be described in a data schema and be published somewhere. Like I said, it does make sense if you're talking about governmental data. It probably makes sense if you're talking on a national level, but even on a national level, do you really want to, maintain the data schemas for the loyalty points of all of the hotels and ferries in Finland in this case? I think you want to push that to whoever, whatever ecosystem is using them. But I'm also pretty confident that we'll find ways to make that work and also to have a good way of discovering them once we start understanding how this works in practice. Yeah, and like I said, what we've seen now is that if you allow any verifier to request anything from a wallet, most of it they can make sense of without too much explanation.
I had one last quick question. I saw that the last week the ARF v2 came out. It looks like EWC is focusing on ARF 1.8. Is that, I assume, because of time constraints?
We picked a version because we need to wrap it up. The difference between 1.8 and 2.0 are not too big. I think 2.0 is a sort of, end of school year wrap up. Everyone's going on holiday and we'll pick it back up in September. That's my idea for now, but I'm not sure because I'm not involved there too much. But it's sort of a nice, okay, we've got a big release. This is it. And what I do really admire, it's in the slides that I shared as well, is there's this whole section of discussion topics, and I would tell you all to go and get engaged there, because there's a lot of areas where, yeah, there's still a lot to discover and determine, and we're not ready yet to make a final specification of it. Bear in mind, the ARF is not legally binding. It's a reference architecture, but it will be the core guidance on interoperability in Europe. So if you don't align to it, there's a good chance that you won't be interoperable on an operational level.
Right. Okay, cool. Interesting. Let's see. I see that we are at time. Yeah, thank you so much, Esther. This was a really great discussion and presentation. Really appreciated your time joining us today.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining and for your updates and questions. Join us next week as well. We'll meet at the regular time and hear about bifold. And yeah, with that, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank you so much, Esther.
Thank you. Have a nice evening or day.
Thank you.
Wherever you are.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.